Howdy, y'all. Last Pond Productions presents the New Way podcast with Ben and Matt. This here podcast contains things not suitable for little critters, including city folk, sneakers, and Floridians. Listener desecration is plumb advised.
I can understand chewing each bite of some food 25 times like chicken fried steak, but I don't think you have to chew your refried beans that many times.
What about my dreams?
Edith, I told you I can't build your candy house. It will fall down. The sun will melt the candy. It won't work. The stars at night are big and bright. Deep in the heart of Texas.
Everybody wants to be naked and famous. Everybody wants to be just like me and naked.
Will you help teach me about this? What is it? A new way?
Welcome to the New Way, coming to you from Bandera, Texas, the cowboy capital of the world. We are going to be doing two segments because we had to supersize this Texas edition of the New Way. The first half of it will be an interview with James E. Hoot Gibson and another one-on-one interview with Mary Alice, who is also my mother. Then, at a later date, we'll be posting the second half, which will feature a radio broadcast that went out on Bandera Radio, and we'll also do a group podcast involving myself, Mary Alice, and Hoot. So make sure you check out part 2, and I hope you enjoy part 1.
I talk too much.
The first segment you're going to hear today is an interview with a character, if ever there was one, Mr. James E. Hoot Gibson. Not a lot to say about Hoot that you're not going to hear in the interview itself. Unfortunately, we lost a couple of parts of the first broadcast, but when I brought him back in, he was a little more subdued, but I think we got some really interesting stuff, and we hope that you guys out there enjoy it. Take a listen. Okay, welcome to the New Way podcast, coming to you from Bandera, Texas, the cowboy capital of the world. Ben is not with us this week, but we have some interesting interviews for you, and maybe even a little bit of a radio broadcast and some other stuff. So hopefully you guys enjoy what we get to do for this week. Today I'm joined by James E. Hoot Gibson, who's a cowboy and movie aficionado. Say hi, Hoot.
Hey, how you doing? Hi, Matt.
Hoot has a pretty interesting background, I would say, as far as having worked in the oil business and now working as a bona fide cowboy. Tell me, what do you do in your day-to-day work? What's a day like in your life?
Get up at daylight. Of course, I quit at dark. Try to. Feed horses every day. Make sure the waters are all right. And check the horses for, you got them turned out in pasture. You got to get around them, and I'm around them every day. Of course, there's goats and fences and chickens and all kinds of critters. I enjoy my coffee in the morning. It's just it's kind of a routine. Every now and then, the monotony is broken by going to town, drinking a beer, or maybe selling a book or a CD, or of course, always once a week I go get horse feed and hay, and I do that with my old blue truck.
And we'll give you guys a link out there to how to buy the book Riders on the Storm by my mother, Mary Alice, and with Hoot as a side writing credit on there. So why did you decide to go into the cowboy business?
Well, the oil patch went to hell in '87. I had quite a investment after I got out of college, and I chose the oil patch, and then when it went bust, so did Hoot. I just said I'm going to go back to the ranch, and I'm going to stay what I grew up with, and I'm not going to chase a dollar bill anymore. Very firm on that. And now then the Eagleford shell is, it's a booming. I could go back and be a consultant probably, but I'm not going to. I'm going to stay with what's good, as I call quality of my life.
Excellent, excellent. So, what's interesting with Hoot is that I'd say you're a pretty big movie fan, wouldn't you say?
I love movies. If I get one, I don't like them 1-hour shows and them 30-minute process things too much. I like comedy, but I really like a movie. I mean, it doesn't have to be about cowboys.
But it helps.
It can be the Avengers, Star Trek. It can be Darth Vader. It can be any of them. I like reading a lot. I like to read the book, so then I watch the film and see how they overlap and how they lie to each other and change things up.
And you read the Harry Potter books, which is one of my favorite series.
Oh, I read all of them.
And you have a favorite character in Potter?
Yes, that was the great big burly guy. What was his name?
I think you had the name before. I don't
Yeah,
know if we
you
can
made
recreate
fun
the
what I
magic,
said.
but because you've got the old wizard, and then you've got the gamekeeper, the one with all the animals.
That's him. What was his
Hagrid.
name? Hagrid. Mm-hmm. I said Ingrid, I think.
I think that's possibly correct.
No, Hagrid. Yeah, that's my favorite actor in Harry Potter.
And if you guys hear that jingle, you're probably hearing a lot of sounds. Not sure how much is picking up, but it's raining outside, and we got Hoot's spurs, and we got his dog's tail. So all kinds of good stuff rounding out our sound effects here on the live podcast. You mentioned the Avengers, and I think that's one of those few things that we talked about initially when I first met you was your interest in comic books. What were your as you can hear the thunder in the skies opening up out there, what were your, I guess that's Thor up there right now making the thunder.
Might be.
What were some of your favorite comic books growing up?
Oh, Marvel and DC both. I collected all of them, and when I couldn't buy them for 10 cents a piece, I'd just go down and sit on the dadgum counter, and I'd sit there and read them. And Miss Davy Wood that owned the little old store, she never did say nothing to me about it. She just let me read on and on. I'd read all of them, but I guess probably Spider-Man was... I fell in love with the two girls. That Spider-Man movie that come out, they didn't have but Mary Jane in there. But they forgot that other one, that blonde-headed one that he kind of really liked. And
she's in the new one, so we'll have to rent that for you while you're here, so you can see the Gwen Stacy one, the blonde one.
But she wasn't cast in that first part of the series of Spider-Man. That's just the way they did it, I guess. But that's not the way the comic book said it 50 years ago when I was reading them.
Do you have any favorite villains? Were there any villains that you liked the best?
Well, the Hulk wasn't really a villain, but he was just a knockout. He meant good, but he could never do good. He was uncontrollable, but it was still a love story. His girlfriend was about the only one that could kind of quiet him down a little bit. And hell, she was on the edge getting her ass stomped too, you know. So
in the first abusive relationship in comic books. We kind of talked about it last time. What's always interested me about comics was my friend who talked about kind of the what makes you interested in a comic book character, because each one of them has a different kind of, their origin story is a different emotion or a different feel. You've got Batman, who is involved with vengeance. He wants to get revenge on the people that killed his parents and get rid of the criminals. And you've got Daredevil, who's about justice. He can't do things by day, so he has to do it by night. You've got the Hulk, who can't control his basically anger management that he can't do.
Yeah, that's easy to answer. Proven. A person that wants to be a good person, no matter what they are, wants to be proven. So you got your work cut out to do. You have to prove it, not just to them, but to yourself. You have to be a complete proven. And that's with horsemanship. That's with building a good fence. That's with the pride of what you do. Whatever you do. I don't care if you're a dat-burn doctor or a lawyer, or I don't care what color you are. As long as you step into the proven territory, then your work's cut out.
Well, that's what I think is interesting that you always talk about Spider-Man being one of your favorites, and that character is completely governed by guilt. And I know you didn't quite agree with me on that one, but what do you think about that? That's Spider-Man is a character that should have acted and done something to help his Uncle Ben and didn't, and he does what he does out of guilt.
Well, yeah, he did. He made some steps that hindsight's always a whole lot easier than foresight, and if he would have known it right off the bat, he wouldn't have done what he'd done. But now you got to live with what you done, and you got to still be proven. You got to take a better step, and whether you're let's just say if you're driven by guilt, honor, fear, pride, money, whatever, there's going to be a driver. And you are nothing but a catalyst to whatever it is. You are the one that's going to make it work. It's kind of like a nerve ending. You've got to make that contact. You're the dendrite of what you are. And good or bad, you're going to live with it. But you will live with that exact, and damn if I didn't want to change some other things in my life, but damn if you do, damn if you don't. Well, don't take that. Don't take that. Just live and buck the horn with what you have. Not what you want, but what you have. And enjoy those things. But work.
You mentioned the Avengers movie, and that's Iron Man and Captain America and Thor and the Hulk. What did you think about the Avengers movie? Did that encapsulate the comic for you?
Well, when I read the comic books, the really my hero when I was that was 50 years ago. I'm an old man. Get over it. Thor was really really, I like Thor better than hell. He could beat the doo-doo out of Superman. And
he's a god.
Yeah. He didn't throw his weight around. He just wanted to be left alone. But he was always asked and demanded of. So he filled that need. So Spider-Man's kind of a little bit, it's entertainment. Superman, hell, it's entertainment. But Thor, now, he had a hammer, and he used it. Yeah.
Now, you kind of skirted that with the villains. You didn't grow up with, being a Lex Luthor fan or being a fan of the Mandarin or Loki.
No, I don't
like any of the villains, the Joker.
No, you give me something that's got horror and stuff like that. Hell, well, people don't have to try to look for that. They can find it without having to do any of that. You don't need that. It'll hunt you down without you trying.
Gotcha. Now, we talked a little before. I want to go back into it of, Ben. I disagreed with Ben vehemently about his labeling of one of your favorite movies as a chick flick, which is Braveheart.
No. I already know it's a love story.
So you feel that that movie isn't about the wars or the battles or the freedom of Scotland. It's primarily a love story.
Yep, it's got a lot of compassion. It's got a lot of it's to me. There's really only two characters, and that's what's the gal that come from France that married that one guy that wasn't. He was not the right guy, and then the king was.
You go ahead. You can tell me the plot of it for those of you out there.
No, but I'm just saying that it was between Mel Gibson, and I can't call her real name, but
Sophie Marceau.
Yeah. I'm just saying, that was the whole thing boiled down to something special in the movie. Now, what was special? Him getting his head cut off? No. Him fighting and winning all those battles? Nope. Him learning whatever he... No, it was him and her. That was the love. And that was... Hell, that's black and white.
Now, another one of your favorites was a movie I can't stand, which is Avatar. the Smurf people flying around their silly tree. Why? What do you like so much about Avatar?
Well, I guess I identify with that a whole lot because I am a twin, and one twin at the beginning got killed over some stupid little wad of money or something, and the other one he wasn't an overachiever. He was a Marine and he went doing what he did, and then he had to come back and fill the boots of his twin brother.
You feel you have a little of that in your life?
A lot. So, am not my twin brother, but I am half of him. So, Avatar, I can plug that up together.
I got you. All right. We were kind of talking about books. Hoot is a big reader. You just finished The Stand, correct?
Yeah.
By Stephen King. What'd you think of The Stand?
I could put it down and I could pick it up. The words are too little to read. The damn thing was too long. They kept repetitively saying things over and over and over. You could kind of see what's going to happen, and maybe you couldn't. And you got to read half the book just to get the characters lined up to where you know where in the hell who's doing what.
Do you have a favorite character in The Stand?
What was that one's name? Tom?
The trash can man?
No, not trash man. Tom Cullen.
Oh, yeah.
The one that kind of don't know, and they had to hypnotize him and do all this kind of stuff, and then send him off to do on a spy mission and all that.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
And the one that he was a simpleton,
mm-hmm.
but I choose him out of the bunch because he was real, he was truthful, he was honest, and he did what he was told, and still yet he kept people in a better way. He even took old Stuart and took care of him. He was a slow learner, but he kept doing it, and he was just. That's Tom Cullen, I think was his name.
Well, next time we'll have to get you reading the Gunslinger series by Stephen King, which I think is probably up your alley. It's all about a cowboy going through the desert. So,
well,
Matt, you might like that one.
You need to tell these folks, whatever you do with this, that I am a cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also a person that has a little education. And I'm going to tell them all right now, if y'all hear what I'm saying, They is some cowboy in or cowgirl in every one of you. You don't even want to admit it, that's just fine with me, but it's still there.
There you go, a message from your Uncle Hoot there on that one. Now, you've done some acting. You actually appeared with, or will be appearing with Ryan Gosling in a Terrence Malick movie that's currently untitled. Did you learn anything interesting from Ryan? Hoot's on a first name basis with Ryan and Terry.
I don't know. We just had the chemistry. We hit it off right at the bat, and I didn't even know who he was. I was just an extra going in to do the backdrop for a Terrence Malick movie. And Ryan, I looked at him across the down bus, was going to the shoot scene, and I just liked him by looking at him. But I didn't know him.
Well, he's a pretty man.
Well, I didn't know who. Hell no, I don't get me that way now. But me and Ryan hit it off, and he gave me a few pointers on the cast, and I wasn't gonna. Improv. I didn't have a script. I didn't have nothing. I was just supposed to stand there and look like a dumbass cowboy kind of. I even changed out, and they wasn't even going to use me. They just going to pay me and tell me to go away. And then Terrence walked up to me, and he said, "I want you in this scene." He said, "Why you dressed? Where's your costume? Where's you?" And you're supposed to be wearing them damn pajamas. So I went to a barn out there, and I changed back, and he said, "Wear your boots, wear your hat, wear your shirt, put on your pajama bottoms." Hello.
There we go. Apparently the gods were not happy with that answer. Now, you told me a story about a tip that Ryan Gosling gave you for acting. What was that?
Well, one thing he told me, Terrence said, "Get your hands out of your pockets." And I took them out instantly. And then Ryan said, "Hey, Hoot." He pulled a piece of grass, and he said, "Here, hold this and twiddle it in your hands, kind of." You know, it's just, here's something you can do that it will keep your hands out of your pockets because you're nervous.
There you go.
And it's just little things like that. He asked me if I was with SAG, and he said, "Hoot, you should be doing this kind of stuff." And I said, "Well, I don't. And I have none ever." And he said, "Well," he did give me hopes on it. It's probably bullshit. But after the post-production's done now, I don't even know the name of the movie, but when it comes out... Well,
neither do they.
Well, they probably ain't named it yet.
Nope.
But, he said he's going to come to Bandera and look me up. We're going to barbecue out here on the ranch.
That would definitely be something, considering he's one of the biggest actors, probably young actors right now working today. So you have a pretty rare story for working with somebody that's probably going to go on to be one of the...
I wished I could have shared. Of course, I'm hindsight now, you know. But I wished I could have shared some of the situations that I've been in, and I could have listened to some of his and how he growed, but that didn't transpire.
Well, that's you get to save it for next time. Now, as far as acting and your acting career, are there any kind of roles that you'd love to play, a part you'd like to play, or are there roles that you wouldn't play?
I won't play no horror, nothing like that.
That's it? Just you won't play a horror?
Horror.
Oh, horror. Okay, well, either way, I guess that sort of works. So you don't want to be in a horror movie.
Well, we got to enunciate this correctly.
So you don't want to be in a scary movie. What if someone offered you a role and somebody wants you to play this ghostly cowboy? You wouldn't do that?
Well, I won't say I won't. Don't ever say never, but you'd have to buy a guy to pay me. Well, pretty good.
Okay, can make that happen. Are there any other roles you would like to play?
Well, it's kind of hard for me to differentiate into being a character and being real. And you have to put on another whole frame mentally to play a part. But it's real easy for me to already play what I am. And sometimes to be an actor, you have to adjust to playing that part, and that's hard for me. It's difficult, but I can do it. I can shine a boot when I have to, but I'd like to do it with what I already know. It's easier.
Do you think you could ever do an accent? What if someone told you they wanted you to not use your Southern Texas accent?
I tell you what, I'm talking like you.
I don't think that's an accent.
And you give me all right one right now, lady.
Doing the greased up deaf guy here. Do you have... All right, so if someone said to do a New York accent, do you think you could do that?
A New York accent?
Yeah.
Well, I've kind of heard them, but I don't... I could... Yeah, probably. But it'd be more like New Jersey.
New Jersey?
New Jersey. Or, something. That's close enough, New York, isn't it?
So you have... Now, I know that you're famous around here for rewatching the same movies over and over again. What are some of your favorite all-time movies?
Well, Braveheart. I like what's that one? Gladiator.
Yep.
300 once in a while. Avatar. I'm kind of burning out on it now, but I've watched it probably 15 times or more.
Now you like The Natural.
Yeah, The Natural has a good... I've liked it for, I guess, the most longest time because it's an older... every now and then I get into Clint Eastwood stuff. And
do you like the new Clint Eastwood stuff? Like $1 Million Baby or...
no, not as good.
Gran Torino?
That was better than Baby. But no, I like his old...
The Unforgiven?
That was pretty good. It was. But Josie Wales and all those older ones that he done, those Italian-made kind of movies, Hang 'em High, Good, Bad, and Ugly. Of course, I don't watch them much anymore either. It's just the kind of movies that I've watched growing up all my life. And, I don't like commercials.
Most people don't.
Well, no. If I'm being paid for a commercial, then I kind of like it a little bit, But I still don't like commercials.
Well, we watched last night Clash of the Titans. You seem to enjoy that movie pretty much.
Mm-hmm. I knew what everything's going to happen. I've seen it quite a few times, but there's things that you pick up when you rewatch a movie. You get more depth. First of all, you see the action and the scenes, and then you go back and you see and you look for the other things that you already know. Those things you watched first time. Second time, you're looking at something else. You're looking at what happened over there, kind of, and what was in the background back yonder at the same time that you still got front and center. And you learn lots of things. It's kind of like walking out in the middle of the pasture. You see things as you go. But if you go again, you'll see different things completely. You'll look at them differently. You'll have a different attitude differently. You may be pissed off one day, and that's the way you're going to look at it. And then the next time you may be half shit-faced, and you'll look at it differently again. It just depends on the time. And you got to watch stuff that you like more than once.
Or 50 or 60 times.
Yeah, period. Because you'll get something out of it every time. Yeah, it's kind of like milking the cow till she's dry.
There you go. We'll do one more question here, and then we're gonna move on to doing a little interview with my mom, and then we're gonna put the two of you guys together, which ought to be interesting. You mentioned both Star Wars and Star Trek before, so you kind of like the sci-fi stuff too, huh?
Yeah. It's got so much technology in it now, and the making them and everything compared to the old Star Trek or the old Lucas, Darth Vader and all them things. It's really got magnified so much, and then since I ain't got but one eye, I don't know what the hell I got to go watch 3D for,
Yeah, I don't think it would work for you. It would just kind of look like, I don't even know.
I'd see it the same way, one eye,
For sure. Did you have a favorite between Star Wars and Star Trek?
If I had a favorite, well, never thought about having a favorite. I met William Shatner at a horse show here a couple years ago. Don't know him that good, but he at least said hi, and he looked at my boots and my hat and stuff, and he said, I think you're in the wrong place. But I guess I'd just go with Star Trek, probably.
And you like the new Star Trek? You like?
I've seen one of them. I haven't seen the latest one, but it's. I gotta adjust. I haven't adjusted yet to it. It's the same kind of character actors, but it's new meat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still used to the old butthole Spock and William Shatner, as the boss. And I'll adjust, maybe.
All right. Well, we're going to take a pause here and then put my mom in the hot seat, and then we'll get back with both of them. This is The New Way with Ben and Matt, minus the Ben plus the Hoot. We'll get back to you in just a second. The second part of our podcast today is going to be with Mary Alice, who is my mother. Mary lives out in Bandera and has written a book called Riders on the Storm, which I was a big part. You can check out the book and find out how to buy at www.ireckonhootgibson.com. Anyway, you get to hear a little bit about my mom my mom and I go back and forth over books and movies and all kinds of great stuff, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Welcome back to The New Way with Ben and Matt. This is the Bandera edition here in the cowboy capital of the world. I am here with my mother, Mary. Say hi, Mom.
Hi.
Pardon me, I'm engaging in...
Indulge in your filthy habit that I used to have.
So we talked to Hoot at length about westerns and comic book movies and some of those things and some of the movies he watches. With you, I think we'll probably kind of stick a little bit more towards adaptations. We did talk a little bit about literature with Hoot, but what are kind of your rules for what makes a good film adaptation from a previously published work?
That's kind of a hard one for me because basically until you got really intrigued with film, I was not much of a film buff. I preferred live theater. I would always go to theater if I could. Movies, okay, but, nothing terrific. I think I tended mostly to like the high concept things, and it was when I took the screenwriting course with Michael Haig, before he was Michael Haig, all caps. He came into Phoenix, Arizona, and did a very intense weekend seminar that I went to, and I began to realize what went in to making a successful film. So adaptations, I think that what has happened more than what makes for a good adaptation is that the novel has actually changed form more and more and is coming closer to the structure of a screenplay.
You have that especially with people like a lot of the popular writers like Michael Crichton and John Grisham definitely wrote kind of things almost for the screen, yet they still managed to mess up quite a few of them when they put them on screen, which is interesting.
Yeah, a lot of the time, especially if they write in a very visual way, which is the way good writing is done today, you can almost feel like you've already seen the movie, and then when the movie comes out, you're always disappointed either in the casting or you're disappointed in what they choose, because you have to make choices. You cannot put any novel directly on screen. That's almost impossible. The writer that I started reading years ago that struck me as the one who moved writing into the newer format was Stephen King. Take that or leave it, but I remember reading Salem's Lot, and he had a very minor character in the beginning of that novel, and the way he drew it, the words that he used to draw that character were so highly visual that later on I actually thought I had seen the film, and the film had not been made yet, and of course was not the equal of the novel.
Well, yeah, and Ben and I talked about that Stephen King is maybe one of the most adapted authors out there, yet also one of the most frequently bungled and Ben, of course, brought up maybe the worst bungling of a King book was directed by King himself, which was Maximum Overdrive.
It was horrible.
Which was not so good.
Well, I think with Stephen King and any of the writers that write in the fantasy genre, he, of course, chooses horror, what most people would consider horror. It's so highly metaphorical, which is what drew me to it in the first place. When I was in college and we were studying Edgar Allan Poe, it was the first time that I really fully understood the layering of really great writing, and that horror at its best is always a metaphor. That's difficult to translate to a visual medium like film. So you're almost always going to be disappointed with any writer that works in that genre and then gets put on screen. It's just never going to meet up to what your imagination has brought to it.
Was there any particular novel that you've seen turned into a movie that you disliked more than the rest? That you thought that they really just missed 100% what they were going for?
Well, Interview with the Vampire was pretty embarrassing all the way around.
Which is actually a movie I like.
Well, okay. But you like Tom Cruise and what's his name?
Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt, yeah. The thing about Interview with the Vampire, which is on almost every university's top 100 great American novels, again, it is completely a metaphor, and people have taken it and they've the gay community has adopted it as something written about their own, and you can certainly find that in it. But at bottom line, that book was Anne Rice trying to come to some kind of peace with the death of this beautiful little 6-year-old daughter that she had, who died of leukemia. And I remember reading that book for the first time, and when she described the child vampire, Claudia, I shivered. And I thought to myself, what's going on here? Because by that time, I understood the techniques that writers use, and it's very hard for me to read anything. I was a comparative literature major at Purdue University, and you overanalyze everything to such a degree that it's very hard for me to read just like audience. And then I read a book, oddly enough, written by a lady that I met, Jenny Cruzy, about Interview with the Vampire, and found out this whole backstory and realized that when Anne Rice wrote that child vampire, what she was trying to do was to give some life to this child that she lost, and at the same time that she lost the child, she lost her faith. And so that's a deeply, powerfully personal novel that this woman wrote. And when they put it on screen, first of all, the girl, was it Kirsten Dunst, was too old. She was older than the child vampire Claudia. And then there were just all kinds of sort of missteps. I mean, Tom Cruise did a formidable job, but there were others that should have embodied Lestat.
Which is funny, though, but I mean, she's also one of those that she liked Cruise's performance, and that's always what interests me with writers that feel that, you know, she was vocal about the fact that he did not look like Lestat, and he didn't, but that when it got boiled down to the basics, that it embodied the spirit, for lack of a better word, of the character. Which is, I think, something that you look for in movies, that they're never going to be... It was one of my biggest problems with the Potter movies when they first started, is that Richard Harris is a wonderful actor, but he was a little frail and a little old. I mean, he wound up dying after the second one, so obviously he wasn't in the best of health, but it wasn't until they brought Michael Gambon in that I felt that they got the humor of the character, which was such an important part for me in the books, that when Richard Harris did it, I just never saw it. He was so serious and so... You know, there was no twinkle in the eye for it. That's kind of what I always look for in there.
Yeah, I guess I would agree with that. I think I was so blown away by the Potter movies because for once I felt they did get 90% of it not only
for sure.
right, they got it so right that it was, you just couldn't tear your eyes away from it. And the books, of course, I find genius from a writer's standpoint, that this woman envisioned a series where these young people went from childhood. You see a lot of coming-of-age stories, but Potter takes them literally from childhood into adulthood, and then that sort of unfortunate revisiting them as they're sending their own children off to... it was fine.
Oh, so I like that, but
I did too. It was fine, but I didn't have the same problem with Richard Harris that you did. In fact, I thought it was a pretty seamless transition. Of course, the makeup and the facial hair and all of that.
It's an old wizard. They all look the same.
But going back to the Interview with the Vampire, just for sake of discussion, Anne Rice hated the whole project. And she took out ads against it. She was extremely vocal. Of course, she was also very ill during that time. And but she really hated it. And then she saw the movie and decided it wasn't as bad. She probably was persuaded that it wasn't as bad.
I don't know. I think with the ones... Now, are there... You know, we kind of touched on it there about casting. When you look at the casting of a character... Are there, other than Lestat, are there other castings in movies from books that you feel just completely missed the point and missed the character? Or conversely, great casting, maybe better than they were on page? For example, in my head, I can draw two in the same movie, and we kind of talked about this in our adaptations podcast, which you can find on our page if you're looking at the old podcasts. But you look at something like Jurassic Park, where I think the casting of Jeff Goldblum was so much more interesting than the character actually was on the page. I mean, the character was this kind of geeky mathematician that was essentially Michael Crichton's voice. He wanted someone in there that was his view on it, and then they cast this sort of rock star version of him with Jeff Goldblum, who has such great cadence and becomes the most watchable one in the movie. And then you look at someone like Laura Dern cast as Ellie Sattler, who's supposed to be this 24-year-old genius in the book, and they cast a 40-year-old idiot. And they,
you just took my statement. I felt that Laura Dern, in the role of that young female scientist, was almost unwatchable. There are certain scenes there that I just went, what, really? We're supposed to accept this woman as this high-level scientist. Jeff Goldblum is always watchable, and he brought some great depth to a character that was pretty flat.
And that's what's kind of interesting with Spielberg when you look at him as a director, because Laura Dern did not want to do the movie. She didn't understand why he wanted to cast her in it. He had to lobby to cast her. And I think that was a problem with Spielberg in the early 90s, before he hit Schindler's List and then went on a run, unlike any other director, I think, in the history of directors of bringing out amazing performances.
Go along with that.
I think I think he didn't know how to direct her. I can guess on set that he's saying, well, on page you were supposed to be this young ingenue type thing, so he had her try to play young at her age. I mean, not that she was old, but she was a lot older, 16 years older.
She just comes across as silly.
Yeah.
And I guess, okay, maybe it was Spielberg's direction. You can't give the actor too much credit when the thing goes well or badly, because they are being directed. But there is in me something that says, just a minute, if I was cast to play a female scientist, and I went to a school where there were some highly technologically oriented and biologically, scientifically oriented people, they don't behave the way she behaved. So I guess I feel like, regardless of the direction, I would have fought a little harder and said, hey, wait a minute, this...
Yeah, but you don't fight Spielberg. Not in any summer blockbuster.
I guess
I like to give her a little bit, because I've seen her in other things where she's fantastic. I think whenever you see an actor that has the ability to be great, you have to start looking at the script and the director,
right,
and say that maybe this was one of those instances where nothing gelled together with them.
Well, you have to remember that my last real experience working with actors was the Palm Beach Shakespeare Festival. And the problem there always was wardrobe. Always. And Jacqueline, who was the lady friend of the producer, I guess he was the producer of the Shakespeare Festival, Kermit Chrisman, she and I were tearing our hair out during some production because the actors were having 10,000 fits about what Kermit had them wearing. And as you well know, he loved taking these Shakespeare plays and setting them in sort of odd...
Yeah, which they do in movies now all the time.
They do it all the time, but Kermit was really very good at it. Well, anyway, the actors were just being absolutely awful about it. And Jacqueline and I looked at each other at one point and said, actors, if only we could do it without them. And then we started to laugh.
That's Hitchcock's line of, the actors are cattle, and if there were a way to make a movie without any of them, he would have been just pleased as punch. Of course, it would have definitely eaten into his dating pool of young blonde women.
True.
So
yeah, that's true. But anyway, I always have an issue when I see an actor that I basically feel took the lazy way out, and then at the same time I'm saying to myself, well, I wasn't there, so I don't know what the direction was, and that's one of the reasons that, much as I love theater and I studied acting with a great acting coach in California, I loved every bit of it, I would have a very difficult time being an actor because you probably have the least control over what you're doing of anybody on a production, and that's why I love writing, because at least
you have even less control there.
Well, I know, but listen, I had one of my writers' conferences, and I think it was Jenny Cruzy who was talking with a group of us, and several of the women were moaning and groaning about how they could not get picked up by a publisher. And she said, look, she said, whether you get picked up by a publisher or not is kind of in the hand of the gods. You never really know. But she said, look at it this way. While you have your project in your computer, that time it was word processors, she said that is truly the last time it is really all your own. Once it goes out there, it will never be your own again. And so she said you need to embrace this unpublished period, because it's really is a wonderful creative time.
The worst thing that can happen to your work is that it becomes popular.
Then
it belongs to a lot of people.
Look at Anne Rice and look at Stephen King. I mean, there are two examples of people who were forced to continue to try to churn out something that they knew had worked before. And I'm sorry, but there comes a point where you're just tapped out. You can only write so many times the same characters, the same scenarios.
Well, you haven't read or watched any of the Game of Thrones series, but what's so fascinating with that is that the guy is such a weird old duck. Right now, no one knows if he's going to finish the series, because he takes his sweet time to do what he wants to do. And they're worried right now that they've built this into this, television series on HBO, and they're almost getting to the point where the show is going to be past where he has written as far as the storyline, and they don't know what's going to happen once they get to the point where they have to say, well, are we going to write the conclusion to this, and then he's going to release a book that has a completely different ending to it.
Well, it's almost like a Twin Peaks moment where the thing becomes successful beyond anybody's expectations, including the writer, and the writer never had a really clear idea where they were going in the first place, and now, oh my God, we've got to keep...
And that happens on TV quite a bit.
Time.
Lost being one of the most famous ones.
Yeah, it eats up a lot. TV eats up tremendous amount of material, and much as I admire great writers, really you do. You get to a point with a certain project where you've plumbed the depths of it, and you can't. There's nowhere to go. So,
I disagree with that, but that's
I don't, because I see it. You see it all the time.
No, I'm saying, but I think that a good writer. I'll bring it back to Rowling. Rowling did a phenomenal job of writing a complete series that makes sense. If you read those books, 1 through 7, all the way through, there's a cohesion to what's going on, and that's partly... Listen, I would never believe for a second that she had everything mapped out from that first book, but she had a lot more than most writers do when they start a series, and she laid down even... She either did one of two good things, as far as I'm concerned. She either knew a lot better than you might think where she was going, or she was at least capable of going back to that first book and saying, okay, I laid some seeds here. I need to make sure that those blossom by the time I get to the end of this piece.
I think she had a very clear structure. Not that she wrote everything, not that everything was absolutely laid out in granite from the beginning, but... because of the beauty of the continuity of the thing, she had to have had a very clear vision of where she was going. And I've heard Jenny Cruzy, I'll reference her again. She always says the writer may be the last one to know what the book is really about. And sometimes you get to the end of something and you say, ooh, I didn't realize that's what, I don't think that was the case with J.K. Rowling. I think she had a very clear vision, at least of the beats that she was going to hit all the way through. And to some extent, when I write, that's the only way that I can write. Because sometimes I'll get bogged down between beat 1 and beat 4, but I'll go to those high points and I will write those high points, and then the rest of it kind of fills in. And I think that's probably pretty much the way she worked. I don't know. who knows? But whatever she did it right.
She made a ton of money off of it, so that's always good.
She did.
And theme parks. For our last question, before we get to the attempt to get everyone involved in on this, are there any books or series that you would love to see on TV or film? I would normally say film, but now with what they're doing on HBO with doing miniseries where they can spend 12 hours on a book and do each one of the books, are there any series that you really would love to see realized?
Well, the project that I'm currently working on is in the vein of absurdist fiction. And one of my favorite writers in that genre is Christopher Moore, who writes these really incredibly funny, edgy novels about this fictional place called something Cove. It's in the Northern California coastal area, and has some absolutely incredible characters in it. Now, I don't know, because it is so high concept, again, and that's what tends to appeal to me. Those things, not for some reason, I know why they work. Again, you bring your own imagination to it, and you sketch those characters so thoroughly as you're reading, and he does such a good job of it that it's very hard to turn it in. But I'd love to see that, because again, I think that you can say more through metaphor, allegory, all of that. I think you can get all kinds of stuff out there that way better than you can with these straight, deadly serious...
See, I thought you were going to talk about McCaffrey's Dragon series.
Well, Anne McCaffrey's Dragon series, and God rest her soul, she's been gone for a while. Her son, I guess, is handling the franchise now. I see bits and pieces. And, of course, Aragon, to me, is a complete rip-off of her
Which
basic
comes from
idea.
a book, also. I mean, that was another series.
But Aragon, I can't really get... Aragon is too childish, I'm sorry. It just doesn't... But Anne McCaffrey's Dragon books, again, I'd love it. And I don't understand why now with computer whatever you call it.
Because there are no vampires or werewolves in them, and everything goes in cycles of what's popular. Right now it's comic books, zombies, and vampires. And
and zombies to me are not very interesting. I'm sorry. They stagger around and they...
Oh, but it's not. I mean, that's one of the reasons why...
Christopher Moore has zombies in one of his books. They get resurrected at Christmas time because there's this terribly inept angel who shows up on Earth, and first he kills Santa, and then the zombies rise up out of the graves. It is one of the funniest books I've ever read. I think it's called... I can't remember the name of it now. Anyway, the something angel. Anyhow, there are zombies in that. But they're
zombies in everything.
They're funny. I mean, and they vanquish the zombies. But zombies are not... I find vampires...
Well, but zombies and vampires are different in that vampires are your protagonists, whereas zombies are just a catalyst for what your human characters are going to... it's the same as... Instead of there being a virus that's killing people, there's a virus that makes zombies, and the zombies are killing people.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've got Hoot back in here here on the rainiest day I've had.
I could keep talking about this.
We'll take a pause here, and then we're going to get the band back together, and move forward with part 3 of our Bandera special. This is The New Way with Ben and Matt. Well, that concludes our Texas edition of The New Way. Hopefully this brought you guys something a little bit different, a little bit new, and we hope to be doing a lot more segments kind of like this in the future. We'd also like to thank the great Art and Lisa, who are musicians, local Bandera musicians, who have actually toured all over the country and nationally. I used some of their music as some of the bumpers in between our segments today, and we really hope you check them out at artandlisa.com. They've got some great music, and they're some wonderful people. Anyway, you can find us, as always, on our website, www.lastpintprod.com, or on Twitter at lastpintprod, or Facebook, facebook.com/lastpint. As always, this has been Matt Schenk with The New Way, and Ben will be returning soon. I hope you have a good day, take care, and cheers.